Once upon a time, in the lands of Japan, there was a rat king who wanted to marry his daughter with the wealthiest possible husband. So he went directly with the best possible candidate, the sun itself. "I feel flattered," he said, "but I am not the perfect candidate that you are looking for. The clouds are more powerful than me, since they can block me whenever they want." The Rat King pondered on it and decided to go with the clouds. Once he arrived, the clouds smiled. "The wind, however, is stronger than me, since it can move clouds without problem." The Rat King decided and went to the wind, but it replied, "I am powerful, yes, but the walls made by humans are even greater, since I am completely unable to blow them down." The Rat King, convinced of having reached the end of his journey, went finally with the walls. They answered, "You have taken a long journey looking for the greatest creature, the perfect groom. But we are afraid to tell you that we are not invincible, since even the mightiest wall can be undermined by a rat." The Rat King has found his groom. Greetings, my friend, and welcome to It's Not a Monster, on defense of the misunderstood, the despised, the vilified, or just the ugly ones. I am David Andres Quinche, and today we are still talking about rats. This is a second part of an episode about rodents, so if you haven't heard the first part yet, go and check that one first. Now, going back to Tanzania, beside the chilling factor that we discussed the other day, there is another main reason why people don't like rodents, and it's more material. In Morogoro, it's common that people farm or garden the land as an activity to get a side income. So, when a rodent eats the seedlings that so much effort and sweat cost you to plant, you are going to feel angry. And here is where the rat training for mines defusal project could be helpful. When you hire and pay local people to train these poacher rats, which are local animals, you are changing these humans-animals interactions. Those who were once antagonists are now allies, and this modifies the perception of the people.
The people who were training the rats actually had a journey, right? That including myself, that we all went through, where we went from disgust or slight cringiness with rats to learning how to appreciate them and understanding how they behave and how they navigate the world, because I think that understanding is very key to making sure that the project works, that these rats do find the landmines that they're trained to find.
As you might imagine, defuse mines is a very delicate process and requires high precision and mutual understanding.
I would describe the process of training rats as a two-way process. So both the rat and the human training the rat changes through this relationship that they have to build together.
If you are a trainer, you need to become very close and intimate with the animal.
So it requires a lot of both mental, emotional, and physical effort to really pay attention to these small details of the rat and be able to then understand that the rat is doing this or doing that, or saying this or saying this or saying that. The rat also is being transformed through this relationship. So one of the most important things that has to happen in the first few weeks after a rat is born is that it has to be socialized to humans. So this rat would smell things like coffee or flowers. You would put the little rat in your pocket and carry it around for a while, and you would touch it, you would let it smell motor oil, or you would stomp and play music next to it, right? These are very human actions. And one of the reasons for doing this is so that the rat becomes used to human presence and human sounds and human movement, which creates the foundation for both rat and the human being able to work closely together. And so this is just the beginning of the process that I'm describing. And then you have the entire process of training that happens after this.
These rats are particularly good for being trained in this duty, mostly for two reasons. One is that, as a lot of other rodents, they are very social.
Different species of rodents have different levels of what counts as a social unit, like the number of rats. But a lot of them they don't always live alone. And most of them live with communities, with families, and obviously with humans and other species.
And being social requires communicate with others.
Rats are social creatures. So what one rat does is always negotiated within what many other rats are doing in a certain community of rats. And you will obviously have rats that are more curious and more exploring. But when they do come back from their exploring, they also have information in their breath that is then communicated to others. And I wouldn't want to think of it as them sort of like sharing a story, because that's not how it works. But it's probably a lot of observation, it's a lot of imitation, it's a lot of smelling, it's a lot of following, and then learning together based on these shared experiences. And so sometimes you will have really specific populations of rats in a certain part of a city where through these learning experiences, all of those rats just don't eat certain kinds of foods, maybe because it's been poisoned in the past.
The second reason is, as you might already notice at this point, rats are very smart.
They can think strategically, they can remember things, they can problem solve to get access to food or shelter.
There have been a lot of studies in neuroscience and cognition proving that rats are able to express complex cognitive behaviors. Behaviors that on some occasion were thought to be exclusively human. Rats can feel and express regret from a wrong decision. Rats can imagine themselves moving through mental environments, similar than when you reconstruct in your mind the pathway needed to reach a specific destination. They can even express complex social behaviors like empathy for others, taking the initiative to release other rats that are trapped and in distress, even if these other rats are strangers. Jia Hui also mentioned something interesting about the way in which the poached rats organize their living spaces. In nature, they build specific separate rooms in their underground burrows. However, when they are raised in captivity and put it not underground but in special chambers,
and in this rectangular space, they would replicate the rooms that they would build underground. And instead of rooms, they have sort of 3 sections in their kennels. And so one section is a section for sleeping, one section is a section for storing food, and then a third section is like where they pee and poop, right? And so this, for a lot of Tanzanian trainers, is like evidence of culture, like rat culture, where they're thinking about dividing their living space and having categories of not mixing, food from poop from sleeping.
I'm not going to dive into the concept of culture in non-human species. It's more complex than it seems. I just wanted to show you how smart, but also how organized and clean they can be. Because, yes, rats can be very clean animals. They constantly bring themselves. And yes, the moment has come. Let's talk about the plague. The Black Death was a plague that, between 1347 and 1353, took the lives of approximately 25 million of people, more than a third of Europe's population by that time. It was caused by the bacteria Yersinia pestis, which was transmitted by fleas. During a lot of time, there was a consensus in the idea that rats were the carriers of these fleas. But 6 years ago, a group of researchers from the University of Oslo discovered that those fleas and lices were most likely not rat parasites, but human parasites. Your Honor, rats are innocent! With this, I don't want to say that rodents do not transmit infectious diseases. Particularly for the case of urban rats, Ratus ratus and Ratus norvegicus, they are indeed a transmission vector for a lot of infections. The point that I want to make is that there is nothing intrinsically dirty or unhealthy in them. Any creature living in crowded and unsanitary conditions has the potential to become a good transmitter of diseases, including us. There is something else that I want to point it out.
Rats and mice are always used either as biological samples or as proxies for humans. So if you were to test something on a rat, you could extrapolate the result. Rat bodies and mouse bodies have been used as well to do research on cellular biology or sexual reproduction.
It is possible that we owe them more human lives than those that have been lost by their infections. Without going any further, these same giant poacher rats that we have been talking about during all this time are also being trained to detect tuberculosis and even find survivors after an earthquake. As a matter of fact, in the city of Novosibirsk, Russia, in front of the Institute of Cytology and Genetics, there is a peculiar memorial. It is the bronze statue of a lab mouse wearing small glasses while knitting the double helix of DNA. The monument of the laboratory mouse commemorates how a great portion of our knowledge in the modern medicine, biotechnology, and genetics had been grounded on the sacrifice of uncountable rodents. So, if you would have to describe the rats to an alien, what would you say?
I would describe the rat as a highly adaptable species of animal that can survive in many environments and is able to make the best of what an environment provides this animal. And then I could tell the alien, maybe I'm talking about human beings, because that's what human beings do. But really, I'm actually talking about a smaller, more humble creature, and that's the rat.
I really like this description of Jia Hui because even though we have other animals more phylogenetically related to us, there is something in the way that they behave, in the way that they organize their societies, that makes them very good proxies to human beings.
Everywhere that the human has traveled to, whether it's through on ships because of exploration and colonialism, or in the building of factories through the Industrial Revolution and the construction of cities and urbanization, the rats have always accompanied humans.
Rats are very adaptable creatures, social and smart, Humble but brave it requires. They have a fine taste and smelling capacities, and they can chew their way through anything. This podcast is part of a small study about non-charismatic species. If you have 2 minutes and you would like to contribute to science and conservation, please check the link to a survey in the description of this episode. It's very quick, I promise. You can find reference and extra material at the description of this episode. This episode was produced by me, David Quincha Giraldo, and with the collaboration of our interviewee, Dr. Jia Hui Lee.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed talking about rats, and I hope that you all learned something about this magnificent and humble creature.
Thanks for listening, and see you next time.